Welcome, everyone. I'm Corey Noles, editor of the Neuron. Today, we're talking about what happens when artificial intelligence moves from being an optional feature inside your business software to becoming part of that system's foundation. More specifically, we're looking at ERP systems. For a long time, ERP has been associated with enormous implementations, complicated integrations, manual processes, and software that businesses tolerate because replacing it sounds even worse. AI has the potential to change that equation. But there's a meaningful difference between adding an AI assistant to an existing system and designing that system around AI from the very beginning. Joining me today is Max Crampton-Thomas, who knows the ERP side of the conversation much better than I do. How's it going, Max?
Oh, I'm great, Corey. I hope all's well on your side, and thanks for having me. I got to be honest, I'm really looking forward to this because ERP is one of the clearest places to test where AI is creating real business value. I got to say, it's not really about adding another chatbot. It's more about whether the system can make financial and operational work faster, more connected, and really easier to control.
Exactly. We're talking about a major shift here. So today's conversation is sponsored by Intuit Enterprise Suite, an AI-native ERP platform designed for growing and mid-market businesses. I guess let's start by taking a look at the bigger picture. Max, before we dive in too deep, what is an ERP system actually supposed to do for a business?
So, at its simplest, ERP is meant to provide a company with a single connect system for running the entire business. So, instead of finance, operations, inventory, and other departments maintaining separate versions of reality, ERP brings that information together. So, I'd say in theory, everyone works from the same data. The problem is that many companies still have information spread across different systems, spreadsheets, entities, reporting processes. So while they may technically have an ERP, they still spend an enormous amount of time manually moving data around.
So you're saying a company can have a central system and still be stitching together dozens of spreadsheets behind the scene?
Exactly. See, spreadsheets aren't the problem. They become a problem when they're the glue holding the finance process together. People export data, they clean it, they reconcile it, combine entity results, and they build a second reporting layer outside the ERP. So the ERP may hold the transactions, but the team still has to turn them into a decision ready view.
So if they're getting by and they know it's not ideal, what pushes businesses to clean that up and get that all in order?
I'd say that growth tends to expose the workarounds. A small team can keep disconnected processes moving. That knowledge does not scale when the business is larger. So then the close gets slower, reports arrive later, teams define the same metric differently, and leaders spend more time asking which number is right.
That feels like an important distinction to call out there. The system may not visibly break. The manual work around it just keeps expanding and growing.
Yeah, exactly. A business often outgrows its processes before it realizes it has outgrown its software, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. We're seeing nearly every software company nowadays bolt AI onto its product messaging now. From your perspective, how can a buyer tell whether AI is meaningfully changing an ERP system or whether it's just another feature in the interface?
So I'd say the best question is not, does this platform have AI? Pretty much almost every vendor can say that now. The better question is, what work does the AI actually perform? Can it reconcile information? Can it detect inconsistencies? Can it standardize data across entities? Can it help prepare the financial close? If the AI only answers questions about the data, that may still be useful, but it is different from AI that participates directly in a governed workflow.
Okay. Well, that gets to something that I spend a lot of time thinking about. The difference between an AI that generates an answer and an AI agent that takes actual action for you. A standard assistant might tell you that these two accounts look inconsistent, but an agentic system could identify that inconsistency, recommend the correction, execute the approved workflow, and preserve a record of what actually happened.
So that's the line that I would draw. In finance, for instance, an action without an audit trail is not an automation you can trust. Speed matters, but so do accuracy, permissions, approvals, traceability. The team needs to know what changed, why it changed, and who authorized it.
Okay. And this is where AI native and bolted on AI show their differences. An AI native system is not simply an older product with a text box added to the side. It's incorporated into the architecture and the workflows from the beginning. That means the AI can work with the system's underlying data, business rules, permissions, and processes. It's positioned to help perform work rather than merely discuss it.
And the value should show up in the work the team already does every day. You shouldn't need a futuristic use case to justify it. Transaction coding, exception review, variance analysis, and close preparation, they're all practical places to look. The goal, obviously, is not to automate judgment, it's to remove that repetitive work that delays judgment.
Okay. In other words, the real idea here is whether or not the system gives skilled employees fewer repetitive tasks to complete.
Exactly.
All right. Let's talk about those repetitive tasks for a moment.
Hmm.
Where do you see the clearest opportunities for AI agents inside accounting and finance today?
It's a good question. The clearest opportunities, I'd say, are the processes that are structured, repetitive, and dependent on the reviewing large amounts of information as opposed to those smaller data sets. Bookkeeping, I would say, is an obvious example. Teams spend time updating transactions and combining information, checking for inconsistencies. And at the end of the day, they need to confirm that all the records have been categorized correctly. Then there's the month end close, where delays in one part of the process create delays everywhere else. AI can help gather that information. It can flag those exceptions. It can complete portions of those workflows. And in turn, that helps people spend more time reviewing the important issues and less time, spent on more of the minute details, I would say.
Yeah. And I think that flag the exceptions point you made is really critical.
Mm.
Humans aren't especially well suited to checking thousands of ordinary transactions to find five unusual ones. That level of meticulous tracking just isn't in our wheelhouse. AI, on the other hand, is much better suited to continuously examining that volume of data and directing human attention toward the anomalies it finds.
Right. I mean, the value is not taking judgment away from the employee. It's giving the employee a smaller, better prioritized set of items to judge.
So Intuit Enterprise Suite provides a solid example through its accounting agent. It's designed to automate manual bookkeeping work like updating transactions, combining data, and reviewing records for inconsistencies. The broader objective, though, is to accelerate the month-end close while maintaining accuracy. From an ERP perspective, Max, how big of a deal is a faster close?
It's a pretty big deal. I'd say it's pretty significant. Closing the books is not only an accounting deadline. Really, it affects when leadership receives a reliable picture of the business. So, when the close takes too long, leaders are making decisions based on information that may already be, several weeks old and perhaps even several months old. I'd say a faster, more dependable close improves both efficiency and decision making.
So there's also an important trust requirement that comes in right here. Intuit's approach is that AI should execute with the rationale and source data available for auditors to follow. That is a much higher standard than an AI producing an answer that simply sounds plausible.
So, Corey, it has to be. So, in finance, explainability is not a nice to have. For any material action, the team should see the source data and the audit record. Otherwise, you have traded a manual process for a completely different risk.
Okay. So the model shouldn't just be that AI replaces the finance team. Ideally, the finance team directs the work, AI executes the repeatable portions, and people retain oversight over those decisions?
That is the right model. So, finance sets the policies, the thresholds, the approvals. At the same time, AI handles the repeatable executions inside those guardrails. And on top of that, people retain responsibility for exceptions and the higher impact decisions.
So let's move over here from automation into visibility. Companies hear promises all the time about a single source of truth. Why do you think consolidated visibility is still so difficult, particularly for businesses with multiple entities?
So multiple entities introduce those several layers of complexity. Each entity may have its own revenue, expenses, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and then you have transactions occurring between those entities. So to understand the total organization, finance has to consolidate that information while properly accounting for intercompany activity and eliminations. So when those processes depend on exports and spreadsheets, producing a company-wide view can take a really large amount of time.
And by the time the report is ready, I guess the business has already changed.
Exactly. So a report can be accurate and still arrive too late to be useful. I'd say the goal is to move from a rear view report to a current operating view.
And this is where a consolidated system can make a real difference. Instead of pulling information from several entities into spreadsheets and then trying to reconcile it after the fact, finance teams can see revenue, expenses, and intercompany activity all in one place. Intuit Enterprise Suite is an example of that approach, giving teams a shared view across entities and helping surface the activity that needs attention. What does that kind of visibility change for a finance leader?
It shifts finance's time from assembly to analysis. So instead of asking questions like, can we trust this report? The finance leader can then ask questions like, why is this entity's margin changing? Where is the cash getting tied up? What should we do? That's when I'd say finance moves from beyond the reporting the business and starts helping to steer it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
And this is another area where AI can be misunderstood. There's this idea that the value is that someone can type, show me the entity with the fastest growing expenses. But it goes so much deeper than that. Where you can see real tangible value is that AI can continuously examine consolidated information, surface meaningful changes, and turn raw data into something a decision maker can go and actually act on.
And because that result is connected to the underlying entries, the user can drill into it, they can challenge it, and they can validate it. I'd say that's different from accepting a black box summary.
So instead of spending the meeting arguing about whose spreadsheet is correct, as we've all done before, the team can spend it discussing what the numbers actually mean.
Which is a much better use of everyone's time.
Agreed. I guess now we should address the elephant in the server room here, which is implementation. Lots of people hear new ERP and picture some expensive multi-year project that disrupts the whole business, makes everyone absolutely miserable. Is that fear justified?
The fear is understandable. ERP implementation is not just installing software. It means, aligning processes, data integrations, controls, testing, training, change management. Complexity rises as the organization grows larger. So, cloud delivery and better migration tools can reduce that burden, but modern doesn't automatically mean easy. The two things don't go hand in hand.
Implementation is another area where newer ERP systems are trying to reduce that burden. Intuit, for example, uses guided onboarding, migration support, and AI assisted workflows to help companies get up and running faster. What do you think buyers should look for when a vendor promises a quicker, less disruptive implementation?
So, Corey, I'd start by asking the vendor to define the finish line. Does implemented mean the first entity is live, that the core financials work, or the organization has already adopted that system? Then I'd move on to ask what is in the scope, what still belongs to the customer. Speed is a real benefit, but only if the data is validated and the controls work. At the end of the day, the team needs to be able to use the system at go live.
And AI assisted migration shouldn't mean blindly pouring old, messy data into a new system.
Definitely not. Migration is an opportunity to improve the data. AI can help map it, but the company should still establish ownership and validation rules.
Agreed. That sounds like a broader principle for enterprise AI. Automation should reduce the effort required to exercise control, not remove control altogether.
That's exactly the standard. Stronger control with less manual effort is the idea.
There's also the question of customization. Why does industry specificity matter in ERP?
Because industry specific should mean more than changing the labels on a dashboard, if I'm being honest. A construction company may need job costing, project profitability, or even subcontractor workflows. On the other side, a nonprofit, they may need fund or restriction tracking, grant reporting, different approval structures. The closer the system starts to the way the business operates, the less customization and work around building the team has to do. So buyers should still verify the depth of those workflows in a live demo.
Well, now let's make this practical. Suppose a finance leader is evaluating an ERP that describes itself as AI native. What questions should that person ask before they sign anything?
My first question would be, which workflows will the AI actually complete? I wouldn't settle for a general AI demonstration. You really want to kind of nail down and ask the vendor to show the specific processes your team performs every month.
Yeah, I like that. I'd even ask, what evidence does the AI provide for its conclusions and actions? Can users see that source data? Is there an audit trail? Can they understand why something was flagged or changed?
I think that's a good point you bring up. In addition to both of those, I'd add in, how are the permissions and approvals handled? So obviously, different employees should have different levels of access. The system should never bypass the company's financial controls just because AI is involved. I think that's actually something maybe you could speak a little further to.
Yeah, it is. And even one more here. Where is human approval required? Some actions may be safe to automate completely. Others may require review because of their financial impact or level of uncertainty.
And I'd say the final thing that I'd probably throw in there is, does the platform fit the way our industry and organizations operate? Then it's doing something valuable. I'd be curious, what do you think?
I think my takeaway is that AI shouldn't be judged by how human the interface sounds, as many like to. It should be judged by how effectively and responsibly the system completes work. The more consequential the workflow, the more important governance becomes. You need source data, rationale, permissions, oversight, and a clear record of what the AI did. And that's what separates an entertaining AI feature from enterprise grade automation.
It's also why the combination of ERP expertise and AI expertise is becoming so important. I'd say businesses need both perspectives. They can't be siloed.
Yeah, that seems like an appropriately diplomatic way of saying neither one of us could have done this conversation alone.
Exactly.
Max, thanks for helping us make sense of the ERP landscape today.
No, thank you, Corey. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat.
And thanks to Intuit Enterprise Suite for sponsoring today's Fireside Chat. Intuit Enterprise Suite is an AI-native ERP platform designed to help growing and mid-market businesses automate financial workflows, consolidate multi-entity data, and implement a new system with less disruption. To learn more about Intuit Enterprise Suite and its agents, pop over to eWEEK.com. We've created a ton of articles around this subject where you can learn so much more. Thanks for watching us today.